listen, do whatever you want to do, but you came here to do your spiritual work. And, you've only got so much time here on earth, so you're not going to get younger. So many people stay in that box of, well, I've always done it this way, and this is the way I'm going to do it. And, and they never really entertain anything new. That to me sounds like a kind of a boring life,
Our guest today, Jacqui Potter, is a healing facilitator and the owner of Rising Phoenix Holistic Center. She's surrendered to the universe's wisdom and embraced the guidance to unite two businesses with a shared focus in the healing arts, working not just with individuals, but also with animals. KarmaHub, sharing the spirit of the healing arts. It's so nice to have you with us today. I'm really looking forward to this. You own a wellness center called Rising Phoenix Healing Center.
Right.
And I guess you have a fair number of other wellness practitioners, healers, whatever label that you want to put on them that work with you.
Right.
That's fantastic. I didn't know that when I chatted with you a couple weeks ago. So can you tell me a little bit about your journey and how you got on this path?
I guess I first started, let me think when it started, I guess about 7 or 8. And my mom, that was back in the Ouija board days. And so they were doing the Ouija board. And next thing you know, I was sleeping one night and I woke up in the morning and there was a man kind of hovering over my bed, because I say hovering because I could see his feet. He was kind of like above, they say they're a foot or so above, the floor. And so I was groggy and waking up, so I didn't know. And he said something about, how are you and whatever. And he said, why are you reading that? And he pointed to the side of the bed. And there was some Dr. Seuss book that was apparently for younger kids than I was at the age. And I just said, oh, and I looked to see what it was. I've forgotten. And then I realized, wait a minute, there's somebody in my room. I don't know who is this person. And then I got scared and he faded away. So I told my parents about it, and my dad took the Ouija board out and burned it because he figured that's what was causing it.
That makes good sense.
So that was the end of that,
Yeah.
But so that kind of opened the door a little bit, and then different things happened. My aunt went in for a surgery and died on the operating table for a little bit, and then came back, and of course had the whole white tunnel experience, and talked to all her relatives, and had the whole wonderful experience, and she said, I don't want to come back. I don't want to. They're like, no, you have to go back and raise your 3 kids. I don't want to, it's so beautiful here, and so,
Wow.
so we learned about that. And then my brother was seeing spirit, and he is 4 years younger than me. So he was, he one day at the table was drawing, and he was literally 2.5, 3, and he drew a stagecoach. So my mom turned around and was like, what is going on? And she said, well, what is it? And he struggled with it. It's a big word, and he said, it's a stagecoach. And she said, well, what is it for? And he said, well, people think they're comfortable, but they're not, And so she was blown away. And then for some reason in the early 70s, she decided to go out and find a healer, intuitive person to find out what was going on. And the lady just said, oh, well, until they're about 6 or 7, they remember their past lives. And she said, what? They're what? And so that opened that door. So doors just kept being opened, and then you find things like astrology along the way and things like that. So, but I just always thought all this stuff would be a hobby. That's how I looked at it. It was a fun little thing to talk to people about, but until I think it was 2016 or something, and I was at Rising Phoenix it had a different owner, and somebody said, "Did you hear that they're going to sell Rising Phoenix?" And I said, "Oh no," because I had really liked this place. It's very close to my house and everything. And so I heard very clearly in my ear, "Why don't you buy it?" And I was like,
Wow.
who was that? And then I proceeded to argue with the voice. I said, I already have a business and I work 60 hours a week. Where am I going to buy this place? But it was strong and it kept, egging me on. And so finally figured out a way to do it. And with a friend and my mom, who was, wanted to be involved.
So
And
what were you doing until that point?
I have a pet business that I was doing. So
Okay.
totally unrelated, but not really, because after years of working with the pets, I realized it's energy, you're kind of communicating with them with energy, and that's how they communicate with themselves.
So was that
So
pause and play or
yes,
animals ain't okay?
pause and play. Yep.
Gotcha.
Yep. So anyway, figured out how to do it and got it up and running and in July of 17. And within 2 months, the friend bailed out on me and my mom passed away suddenly. So it was like, what? Why did you tell me to do this? And so I figured out that it was a lot of life lessons and stuff, and that I was supposed to be here by myself. So all along, but I think they gave me what looked like help so that I would do it. And then they knew I would never do it by myself. So they had to give me people that looked like they would help me along the
Oh,
way. And then,
absolutely.
yeah, and then take them
Oh,
away. They were never meant to be there. So that's kind of the story of how I ended up being here. And, lots of healing classes along the way. And, that seemed to be more my thing, was healing as opposed to readings and stuff like that. So
so you had so pause and all right was yeah, pause and play, right?
pause and play.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
so you had that as a full-time business, and did you just stop that altogether
Yeah.
and then step right into it, or did you try and handle both of them at once?
No, I tried to handle both of them at one time. So it was
Okay.
really interesting. Yeah. And so what I did is I suddenly got the idea one day that I could have different artists that make jewelry and make different things or readers or whatever come in and watch the shop
Mhm.
for, the period that day or whatever. So that's how I ended up making it work.
Well, I was reading at your wellness center, you do a lot of different things. So past life readings and Reiki, angel
Mm-hmm.
readings.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see, access bars, which I'd love to get into a little bit. I know a little bit about access bars, as
Mm-hmm.
we talked the other day. Um, iridol, ir, iri, iridology,
Iridology. Yeah, I have
iridology,
trouble with that one too. Iridology, I think it is. Yeah.
iridology, which
Yeah,
I
from
know
the
very
iris.
little. I know very little about that. And then also prana
Shakti.
shat shati
Shakti. Yep.
shati.
Yep.
And I
Yep.
know nothing about that. I'd love to at
Hmm.
least learn, get a little taste of both of those.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's see. The iridology is basically she looks at with like a light and a
Okay.
magnifying glass, the iris of your eye. And
Okay.
it's amazing because she can see all these things in it. She can see like your whole medical history, because nobody's eye is exactly the same. So she can see like a little yellow dot or something. And it's pretty
See.
amazing how she's got all these charts and she can look up things and say, "Oh, you got something with your heart or whatever," you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And then she can kind of tell you where your weaknesses are or whatever, and give you kind of heads up, take a look at this area or whatever. It's fascinating. And this every time she's done a reading, it's been spot on
Is
for
that
people. They're
right?
like, "Oh yeah, I did have
Wow.
that or that, this or that condition." Yeah.
Wow.
So it's pretty amazing.
Well, because I'm familiar with, I guess I've been to a doctor before, an eye doctor, and they could tell if you have high blood pressure,
Right.
based on your, the little vessels in there. And if it's tweaked off to a certain direction, they're like, it
Hmm.
looks like you have high blood pressure.
Right.
Um, but I had no idea that you could really get down in depth. I'd love to kind of dive in a little deeper. And you were faced with this choice of staying with, working with animals on a more
Hmm.
full-time basis, or opening up this wellness center, something you
Right.
thought would be more of a hobby. And what kind of kept you on target with opening up this wellness center? Or were there, I mean, do you have any stories of healings or transformations, or
Hmm.
like what drew you to taking, buying this place and having people work under you, where
Yeah.
I don't feel like you had that kind of background prior to this. You just jumped in and
No.
did something that
Yeah.
was completely, not the norm.
I know. Well, the voice was strong, and I just one thing that happened was a couple years prior, I was really called to do a mediumship reading because I kept running into my dad's friends, and he had been gone for a long time. So I thought, oh, my dad must need to tell me something, you know. So I finally made the appointment and got in with the person, and my dad didn't come through. Who came through was Edgar Casey. And I was like, lady, you're crazy. You know, what is Edgar Casey coming through to me to tell me, you know? And I really didn't believe her, but I just played along. I was like, well, that's
Okay.
nice. And she's freaking out like, you know, as a spiritual person, she's like, Michael Jackson just came in the room, you know? She's like,
Okay.
I can't believe I've been reading people for 18 years and he's never come through in a reading. And she's just awestruck, you know? And I'm like, sure, okay, that's nice, you know? But then every single person that I told about it, when I, the next day or whatever, there was a synchronicity. Oh, I just read his book, or I just went to his center. I just did something with
Okay.
Edgar Casey. So I thought, okay, maybe it was real, you know? So he was basically kind of
How's he
like a
doing?
parent.
How's he doing over on the other side?
Great, apparently.
Okay.
But he was basically giving me a kick in the butt. He was like, listen, do whatever you want to do, but you came here to do your spiritual work. And, you know, you've only got so much time here on earth, so you're not going to get younger. And so then I felt bad because then I felt like, oh God, I let Edgar Casey down, you know? So it was a little bit more pressure. So when this came up, I thought, oh, okay, maybe I better do this, you know, because I'd been avoiding for so many years and thinking, it's just a fun thing, you know, to do. But so, and I also went to, I wasn't sure what I was supposed to do. I took lots of different classes. And finally, I went to a couple of hypnosis sessions, and the lady said, "You're a healer." And I said, "I am." And she said, "Yeah." She said, "Why don't you go see a couple past lives that you've had and ask to be shown the healing past lives?" And so she's like, "Then it should trigger it for you. It should kickstart you a little bit, you know." And I said, "Okay." So I did that, and I found all the shaman and all these healers and all this stuff. And I was like, "Oh, okay." And then I started thinking back of how I have always liked to help people, you know, like in my family and stuff. And, you know, I was always trying to fix people and heal them if they had something going on, you know. So then it kind of clicked in and I was like, okay. And then once I started doing it, I was like, oh, I really love this. You know, it feels so good to help people. So that was it. It's a long journey
Wow.
because I wasn't getting the message soon enough, but that's fine. You know, it's always the way it's supposed to be. Right.
It comes when
So,
it's supposed to.
mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm. The prana shakti that you asked about was a really cool thing that happened. I don't know if you know Benita Woods,
I do not.
but she I was kind of in touch with her at the time, and she ended up meeting this guru from India, and he came here to teach the prana shakti. So a couple years back, we had him come, and he went to several centers around the area, and we had about 35 people in here, which is a lot. And he did like I think it was a 3 or 4 day certification for everybody that came. And it's
Oh,
kind of like the Indian form of Reiki in a way.
okay.
Um, you know, it's like energy healing, hands on, and then so it was fascinating. So a lot of people got certified in that, and it's a really cool modality, very powerful.
What
So,
would you say the fundamental difference is?
um, hmm, what would be? He was just so in depth with everything. You know, he went through. not just working on people, but also working on land, working to clear and heal crystals and different things like that. Um, and a lot of just a lot of different techniques where Reiki, I think, is kind of like the whole, you're putting energy in and you're sending energy and you're the vessel.
Okay.
His had more techniques, a lot more detail and things like sometimes taking things out of the body and different things and manipulating things like that. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Well,
Yeah.
that's
So,
one of the reasons I actually like Reiki is because it's fairly simple. The energy goes where it needs to go. You don't have to
yeah.
be. I mean,
Yeah.
you can be very pointed and
Yeah.
direct, but you don't
Mhm.
need to be. So,
Right.
um,
Yeah.
so it works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Just flip the switch, right?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
So, do you have any specific stories that you want to share, like transformations or
Um,
healings that you've actually either experienced yourself
mhm,
or
mhm.
witnessed in others?
Right. 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 Well, I took, Reiki and a lot of other healing modalities, and I really liked them all. But once I took Access, I don't know, something just clicked in with me.
Hmm.
It just made sense, and it just, uh, what I liked about Access is it was taking stuff out. So it's clearing, like, anything from like fear, stress, worry, the little things, or big things like trauma and pain and stuff like that. So that made sense to me as the time went on because I thought, wait a minute, if you just are going and putting energy in, like a lot of the Reiki, now sometimes the Reiki takes stuff, it takes out too, but a lot of it is focused on sending energy into the body.
Mhm.
It's kind of like, when you change your oil and you just don't take the old oil out and just put new oil in. It's like, how can that really be long lasting? Because the old oil still, it can't get in. So it made sense to me to take out stuff because we've all got stuff, our stuff that we have, and it needs to go, for there to be real healing, or at least some of it needs to shift and change. Um, so then it made even more sense to me to why, because when I first took it, I didn't really have any pain or any illness or anything, but I was a big overthinker, overanalyzer, that kind of thing. I was in my head a lot and all that, and it helps with that for sure. Um, uh, the stress, just like the negative loops that we might be on in our head and things like that. So started doing Access and saw a big change with me, not getting triggered as much as another one, um, from different various things. And that was what I experienced after I first did it. I thought, oh, the lady said you might not get triggered. And I noticed the next interaction I had with my brother, who was triggering me at the time, I didn't even care what he was saying. I was
Oh
like, this is
wow.
weird. I'm playing the words in my head, and I'm like, wait a minute, normally I'd be mad at this, and because you know how siblings like to push your buttons sometimes. And so he knew how to do that, and he was even shocked because I was just standing there, and he looked at me like, aren't you going to respond? And and I was like, well, have a good day. And so he was like, what's wrong with you? But anyway, so yeah, I had some experiences with people, and the good thing about Access is it's always different, which is kind of fun. And one lady that stands out, um, she was recovering from cancer, and she'd had it like 11 years, and she'd done every possible treatment, holistic and other, but she still had some pain, and she was on heavy pain medicine, but then she was also depressed, had absolutely no energy, and she would come home from work and just collapse. She couldn't even make dinner, and all that kind of thing. So she we did a session, and all of a sudden she started like shaking just in her torso, like from her neck down to her legs, and just like shaking. She was like, what's happening? And I said, well, you're just moving the energy out, and everything. And because people have different reactions.
Right.
So Anyway, we finished the session. We talked about some stuff, and then uh, she, I didn't think about it much. 3 weeks later, she crossed my mind that day, and then I came in, and there was a message from her, and she said, "When I left, I felt really good." And she said, but she said, since then, I've felt great. I've gotten off my pain medicine. I don't have any more pain. I don't have the depression. I'm back to hiking and walking and doing all this stuff. And I was like, what? I couldn't believe it. So I was really excited, because I thought,
Right.
wow, this stuff really works, and fast. This was one session.
Well, that's one of the
So,
things that's very curious to me is sometimes there is immediate change, like
mhm,
um, amazing, huge
mhm,
changes occur.
right,
And other times, not so much. They don't really
right.
notice much of a difference.
Hmm.
And I'm curious as to, your thoughts. Why does it happen? Any insights there? Like,
Right.
why is there such a differential, a
Hmm.
wide variety of results when it comes to,
Right.
energy medicine?
Right. Right. Well, what I think it could be is that, and I always tell people this when they first come in, I say, really, it depends on what you and your body is ready to release, you know? So that's kind of it. And we all know people who are not ready or don't even really want to heal, they
Mhm.
kind of want to hold on to their stuff, and but some of this stuff, um, we get into conversations about a lot of stuff starts in childhood, you know.
Mhm.
So there could be problems with, the parents or whatever it is, or it could be, your boss at work or whatever. And some people are ready to let that stuff go, and some people are just not, or they don't believe. That's the other thing, everything is controlled by your beliefs. So if you don't believe you can get better, um, you're not going to get better, you know?
Well,
So,
I think as a sweeping rule, that's exactly right. But I have come across quite a few people and heard many more stories
mhm,
of people that they just don't believe in this stuff. And yet
right.
when they experience it, and
Yeah.
I always encourage people to just try it, because you can't
Yeah.
knock it till you try it, right?
Right. Right.
And there are these skeptics, these people that have really no interest in doing this, and for one reason or another, they've been strong armed to get
Yeah.
onto a table and get a treatment of some sort or the other.
Right.
And it's amazing to me when those
Mhm.
types,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
they sometimes can feel it, but the results are resoundingly beneficial. And they get off
Yeah.
that thing and they're kind of wide eyed and astounded and
Yeah.
surprised.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
so, that's kind of an example, at least from my perspective. Well, maybe like subconsciously they're ready to make a change, but
Right.
consciously they're like, nah, that can't possibly do
Yeah.
anything for me. So
Right.
so maybe
Right.
it really does have to do more with the spirit within ready to make the
Yes.
change. The timing is right, despite
Yeah.
despite their outer belief system.
Yeah. I think so too. I agree because
Okay.
it could be on their timeline of when they need to kind of heal from the thing, or it could be that they're meant to open their eyes to, these spiritual concepts, you know, at this time. So when they have a healing and it works, they're like, oh, because maybe they're meant to be a healer or something. Who knows,
Right.
So something's got to open their eyes to it. But yeah,
Yeah.
we have a lot of people like that totally were non-believers, and then suddenly something happens, and once you see it with your own eyes, then you're like, oh, well, okay, I'm not going to
Right.
discount that anymore.
I mean,
So
and that's what happened to me. I didn't believe in any of this stuff, right?
yeah,
I just didn't. I mean,
yeah,
how could energy medicine really be a thing? right?
Right. Right.
But
I know.
there was a particular event, and I had particular experiences, and it was like a big
Yeah.
old sledgehammer knocking me over the head. It was one event after another, after another, after another. I speak of this occurrence quite often because it
Hmm.
definitely it changed the path that I
Yeah.
was walking down.
Exactly. And that was probably what you needed to get to. So they're like, well, what better way than we'll see what happens when they get a healing, or a
Yeah.
treatment or whatever. Yeah. So I think that's what it is. I think everybody's journey is a little different. And so you just don't know. But I had a guy like that the other day, and he was open, but he really didn't understand any of it. And so I saw him a couple weeks
Well,
ago, and he's like,
I don't understand any of it.
yeah, well, I don't know if
You
any of us
know?
really understand it, but yeah, how it actually works, other than it's just energy. But he said, hey, guess what? My ankle doesn't hurt anymore. And I said, great. So then he referred his wife, who really is not into this stuff at all. And so I'll be interested to see how that goes. Because sometimes it can be the people who really don't believe in it much at all, and then they turn totally around.
Hmm.
So who knows. But I would just say everybody's journey is different, so who knows what's going to happen. So,
Now,
but it's fascinating.
getting back to access bars. So
Hmm.
you had mentioned one of the things that resonated with you is the fact that you actually pull energy like out, and then you could put energy kind of back in, reapply it, so to speak.
Hmm.
Um, so I took some classes in pranic healing not too
Hmm.
long ago, and it's very much the same way. One of the things that
Hmm.
fundamental difference I would say is that the first step you need to do in pranic healing, or one of the first steps, is you remove energy from an area that needs work. You
Right.
take out the old and you put in the new,
Right. Right.
right?
Yeah.
And I think that I agree. I feel like that makes a lot of sense. So now when
Yeah.
give,
Yeah.
I still tend to focus on Reiki, but when I give
Yeah.
Reiki, I try and take out the old. I
Hmm.
kind of let it come out, push
Hmm.
it out, or whatever I need to do, and then I kind of shift gears and then put in the new energy.
Yeah.
But
Yes. Exactly.
I think when I spoke to you the other day, I kind of compared my perception of um, access bars to sort of a version, or has parallels in my mind, at least, cranial sacral therapy. When I
Hmm.
see cranial sacral therapy, you're working around, the head, and you have
Yeah.
these little points that almost your fingers can almost perfectly seat in these little points in the head,
Yep. Hmm.
and it's quite interesting.
Yeah.
Um, and I see that. Well, I know that access bars has some of those, maybe not the same points, but you
Hmm.
do put your fingers in certain areas,
Hmm.
and there are some similarities. And uh, what are your thoughts on that?
As
Do
far as how they're similar.
Well, yeah. I mean, do you think that there are similarities there, or
Yeah, everybody asks that question, and there
Oh,
are.
okay,
I think I've only had one session of cranium sacral, so there are some similarities for sure.
okay,
Um, but Access tends to have they've got a lot of other healing. It's a whole modality. So they have verbal facilitation, they have the tools that you use, they have the clearing statement, they have all that kind of stuff. So I think that when you use all the different things with the points, that's what really makes it, I guess, different from cranial sacral, you know. And but again, I don't know as much about that, so I'm not sure. But
yeah,
at least for me, that's what makes it so dynamic because you're saying the clearing statement while you've got your fingers on the points, and
mhm.
so it kind of gives it a little bit more energy, I think, to
That makes
get things
sense.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. So we
Okay.
talked briefly about your other business, pause and play, but I
Right.
also read, doing a little digging on you,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, Animals, Angels, and Art.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Um, that was an idea I had to kind of try to merge. I've always been trying to merge them together,
Okay.
all both businesses, because I thought it'd be really cool to like, have a dog in while somebody's laying in the room while somebody's doing Reiki and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
But it hasn't come to that yet. But although I do have some dogs that I kind of are on my work here that I'm watching, but luckily they're very good. Um, but animals are natural healers too. So, there's all that goes along with it. But what I've kind of done now with the shop with Rising Phoenix is I did let go of the brick and mortar pause and play because it was a doggy daycare
Hmm.
primarily. But when COVID hit, people weren't working 5 days a week anymore. So I kind of let that go. And then, but I continue now out of Rising Phoenix. I sell the whole really holistic dog food and treats and cat food. And then we still do the pet walking and taking care of the pets. So it's like I've kept parts of Pause and Play and merged it into Rising
That
Phoenix.
makes
So
sense.
yeah,
So I read here that you're a raw pet food advocate.
yes, yes,
I think that's fantastic.
yeah, very,
Yeah.
very much. So, have you heard of raw food? Do you know what it is for
Raw
pets?
food for dogs,
Yeah,
or pets.
yeah,
I mean, I know raw food for people, but
yes,
I'm curious as to the difference.
right.
I have heard, um, you hear stuff on the internet that the reason animals now or pets have such a high cancer rate is because they're given, the food's processed the same as our
Mhm.
processed food, right?
Yes,
And it's
yes.
not good for the animals. And I mean, my
No.
dog, he's 14, he's doing great, but he has lumps all over his body, and
Yeah,
yeah, he's
yeah,
and
yeah,
he's
yeah,
he's at the end of his days.
yeah.
But
Well,
I'd love to hear about the raw food for animals.
yes. It so I found out about it when my dog was 4 and she needed to go to the vet to get her teeth cleaned because they were brown. So I thought there's got to be a better way, than put her under anesthesia and doing all that. And it's fairly expensive nowadays too to do that. But I started hearing about raw food and how good it was for cleaning the teeth. And I thought, well, this is interesting. Looked at it, did some research, called a lot of people and companies, and finally just decided to try it. And so I put my dog on just the raw food, took away all bones and things like that um, for a while for the 3 months. And after the 3 months, her teeth were pearly white. She went through a
Hmm.
detox where she dropped some of her hair. And but then after that, the lady said, "Don't worry about it. Her hair will grow back thicker and softer, and the whole thing." And so I learned about raw that way. And it basically is their natural diet. So they come from wolves, we all know that. And if they didn't have us, they would just go out, catch a squirrel or a rabbit or something and eat it. They wouldn't cook it. They wouldn't, do all that stuff. So it's their natural diet. So the food that I get it's actually made in Baltimore. One of my big suppliers is in Baltimore. And uh, it has the muscle meat and it has the bone that's
Mhm.
ground up because they need the bone because they're getting so much protein in the muscle meat. They need the calcium and phosphorus and all that to break it down. And then they have the organ meat, which is the most important. And then a little bit of fruits and veggies for vitamins and different things. And that's basically all it is. And it comes frozen, so it's so easy. All you have to do is thaw it in your fridge and then throw it in their bowl. And they go crazy for it most of the time. It's like finally getting, what they really need. And they love it. Um, and I wanted to mention about the organ meat. So I don't know if you're familiar with what a glandular is, type of
No,
healing.
no.
If somebody gets, say, problems with their thyroid or any organ,
Okay.
you can take cow and pig or whatever thyroid. We can take it in a pill form, and it will work to heal your thyroid. So it's kind of like cures like. So I have known people that have taken that and even given it to their dogs, the glandular, and it really helps. So so the wolves and the dogs instinctively know this. So when you have your alpha wolves in a pack and they make a kill and they go, they eat first. And what do they eat? They eat the organs because they want to stay the strongest in the pack. They want to be the healthiest. So it makes, total sense. So, but anyway, my experience was, her teeth were pearly white at the end of the 3 months. I couldn't believe it. I was just like, whoa, everybody's got to know about this. So I never planned on selling dog food, but I had to because I said, people need to know about this stuff. And then looking and doing all the research and stuff, I realized that, like similar to our food in 1930s, they started making dog kibble, the dry kibble. And it was sold like so many things as a convenience, and it was easy, and it was, all that, just pour it out of the bag and your dog needs nothing but gravy train the whole, for the rest of its life, which doesn't even make sense, right? That's like saying we would only eat one food for the rest of our life.
Right, right.
Yeah, and it's processed. So over the years I've seen, because dogs have shorter lifespans, I've seen the dogs decline, like you said. Now they're getting cancer at 2 and stuff like that. So
Wow.
that and the over vaccination is another big problem with the animals. So, but yeah, now they've got the same problems we have because they're eating the crappy food. So, but anyway, so I started telling people about it, and I've literally seen cancer go away. I met a 22-year-old shepherd one time
Wow.
who had been fed nothing, but he didn't even know I sold raw food. He just happened to come in the shop, and the dog was fine. He was, you could tell he was an older dog, but he was in great health, and you know, they shed less, their eyes aren't as drippy, and they have more energy. They lose weight, which is a big one for a lot of people who have overweight dogs. So they lose weight right away. It's just their natural diet, and they love it. I always say it's not fair because the things that we love the most, like ice cream, is not our natural diet.
That's right.
Unfortunately,
That's right.
it'd be great if we could eat ice cream all the time and be really healthy. So, but they can. And so my dog ended up making it to 16 in 3 months or something, and she never had a teeth cleaning. And so I saved a lot of money on that, and she was really healthy. And I had a client who had her dog was the sister to her vet's dog. And she started feeding her raw food when she was like 12, and she was a lab. And she took her in for her blood work and all that. And the vet said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "What do you mean?" She's like, "Well, her blood work is that of a 1-year-old dog." And she's like, "I've got the sister. I know what. And she said, "Well, I started feeding her raw." And so she couldn't believe it. She was like, "Wow." So they really, they say big dogs can live to about 22 and little dogs 30.
Really?
So we're
I've actually never heard that.
mhm.
I
Yeah.
thought I was doing pretty well having a 14-year-old dog.
Yeah, yeah. Now your 14-year-old dog would really benefit from switching it up right now just to try to extend the life, and have
Oh,
less problems. Yeah, yeah. So, and the
okay.
thing is, I tell people now, why would you ever feed anything different, especially to an older dog, because they enjoy it so much. They're so happy to get it. Um, why wouldn't you give them that gift in their later years? So my dog, I know when I would forget to bring it home and I would go back and give her some kibble, and she'd look at me like I was crazy. She said, "I don't eat that anymore." I'm waiting for the fresh stuff. So it's been quite a journey with healing animals, people, and just everything. So it's been quite interesting.
Wow. Well, that's
Yeah.
fantastic. I wish you the best, kind of merging both of those
Yeah.
those two different worlds and bringing them together. Well, it's all under the healing
Well,
umbrella. So,
it's all under
uh,
holistic. Yep.
and us
Hmm.
people need to learn to eat more raw, good food as well.
Exactly. It very much mirrors, and it's funny. I'll have people that totally discount it, and then they change their diet and they're like, "Oh, I see now. I need to do this for my dog too." Or they'll have the opposite. But they'll be real unhealthy. They'll change to raw on their dog, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, okay, I need to do this for myself." It's the same. We're all the same. We're all beings.
Right.
So we need to be putting better stuff in. you know.
So how can people get a hold of you?
They can go to risingphoenixhc.com, or they can, we have, Facebook, pretty much the same name. Instagram is Rising Phoenix Virginia, I believe. And yeah, so they can reach us on all those.
Are there any summary points or highlights or anything that you kind of want to drive home?
Somebody asked me recently about, I kind of feel like anything can be healed. I kind of buy into the theory that it's what you believe. Your beliefs run your life. So if you believe that you cannot be cured from X, then whatever it is, you won't be, like Joe Dispenza. I mean, he healed himself from all of that horrible, I think he was almost paraplegic with the accident, and he's doing really well. But he believed he could do it, So I think people's beliefs limit them so much and in really anything, if you don't believe it, you're right. It is not going to happen, So, and then I have up on the wall here, one of my favorite quotes, which is, "A worry is a creation." So,
Hmm.
whatever, especially I think parents worry a lot about their kids. And I see why, but whenever you're putting your attention on stuff that you're worried about, you're basically just asking that to come right for you. I know somebody who had a spouse die of cancer or something, and they just were so miserable after that. They just missed the person so much, and they literally just thought about, oh, maybe I'll get cancer all the time. That's all they talked about, and they got cancer. So I think we control our lives a lot more than, if you get into all the manifestation and law of attraction stuff, what are you putting your mind on? What are you focusing on? So, we create a lot of our stuff, but, and then unknowingly, of course, people get mad when they say, I didn't create this cancer. I didn't, but then once they learn about this stuff, they think, well, maybe unconsciously I did because I was angry at my dad or whatever, whatever
They
things it
manifested
was.
it. Uh-huh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or it was a learning experience or whatever, So,
So in a world with so many different types of healing and wellness practices, I mean, you have many just under your roof that at your wellness center. How do you determine which one you should use?
hmm. Well, I would say, do your research and, I'm always a gut feeling kind of person. So I would say do your research and just reach out to whoever you feel like, you know, kind of jumps out at you or you sounds interesting to you or fascinating to you. People always ask me that when they come in and they're just starting their spiritual journey and they said, well, what do I study first? Reiki, crystals, astrology, what, or manifestation. And I said, well, what do you like? Just go towards that, go towards what interests you. So I think if people look up whatever thing and don't be afraid to do more than one too,
All
like
right.
maybe do iridology and then do craniosacral and then do access bars or whatever, and I tell people that all the time with dog training. They ask me that all the time because people there, you look up something about a dog and there are a million different ways to do it, on Google and it's going to be polar opposites. So I always tell people, take one class with one person and then make sure you go to a different trainer and then go to a different trainer after that and you see who you resonate with, and who it makes more sense to you, because everybody does things a little bit differently, you know.
Gotcha.
So that,
That makes sense.
again, that gets into people's beliefs,
Right.
what they believe is possible and what they believe is good. So, yeah.
And what is one question you wish more people would ask about spirituality or the healing arts?
I was going to say, how does it work? Or how,
Okay.
you know, so that somebody can, so that they can be open enough to at least hear, or try it, but, or just listen to the story. So I'm a very open person. I'll listen to most things, from people. I don't have to agree with them, but I at least listen, to
Right.
what they're saying. And I think the more you're open, the more you learn ultimately, because you can learn something from everybody, in every conversation. So I say stay open, listen to what they have to say, and just see if it makes sense to you, or ask more questions. But so many people stay in that box of, well, I've always done it this way, and this is the way I'm going to do it, and they never really entertain anything new. That to me sounds like a kind of a boring life,
Right.
But to each his own. But that's what I would say.
Well, thank you. This has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you
Oh,
so much for
wonderful.
joining us.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you.